In 1587, John White, the governor of the Roanoke Colony, returned to England to acquire additional supplies. He would be unable to return until 1590 due to an ongoing war between the Spanish and English. This is his account of returning to the Roanoke Colony. To the worshipful and my very friend, Master Richard Hakluyt, much happiness in the Lord. Sir, as well for the satisfying of your earnest request, as the performance of my promise made unto you, as my last being with you in England, I have sent you, although in a homely style, especially for the contentation of a delicate ear, the true discourse of my last voyage into the West Indies, and the parts of America called Virginia, taken in hand about the end of February, in the year of our redemption, 1590. And what events happened unto us in this our journey, you shall plainly perceive by the sequel of my discourse. The 15th of August towards evening, we came to an anchor at Hatteras, in 36 degrees and 1/3, in 5 fathom water, 3 leagues from the shore. At our first coming to anchor on this shore, we saw a great smoke rise in the Isle Roanoke, near the place where I left our colony in the year 1587, which smoke put us in good hope that some of the colony were there and expecting my return out of England. The 16th and next morning, our 2 boats went ashore, and Captain Cook and Captain Spicer and their company with me, with intent to pass to the place at Roanoke where our countrymen were left. At our putting from the ship, we commanded our master gunner to make ready 2 minions and a falcon well loaden, and to shoot them off with reasonable space between every shot, to the end that their reports might be heard to the place where we hoped to find some of our people. This was accordingly performed, and our 2 boats put off unto the shore. In the Admiral's boat we sounded all the way, and found from our ship until we came within a mile of the shore 9, 8, and 7 fathom. But before we were halfway between our ships and the shore, we saw another great smoke to the southwest of Kindricker's Mount. We therefore thought good to go to that second smoke first. But it was much further from the harbour where we landed than we supposed it to be, so that we were very sore tired before we came to the smoke. But that which grieved us more was that when we came to the smoke, we found no man nor sign that any had been there lately, nor yet any fresh water in all this way to drink. Being thus wearied with this journey, we returned to the harbour where we left our boats, who in our absence had brought their cask ashore for fresh water. So we deferred our going to Roanoke until the next morning, and caused some of those sailors to dig in those sandy hills for fresh water, whereof we found very sufficient. That night we returned aboard with our boats and our whole company in safety. The next morning, being the 17th of August, our boats and company were prepared again to go up to Roanoke, but Captain Spicer had then sent his boat ashore for fresh water, by means whereof it was 10 of the clock afternoon before we put from our ships, which were then come to an anchor within 2 miles of the shore. The Admiral's boat was halfway toward the shore when Captain Spicer put off from his ship. The Admiral's boat first passed the breach, but not without some danger of sinking, for we had a sea break into our boat, which filled us half full of water. But by the will of God and careful steerage of Captain Cook, we came safe ashore, saving only that our furniture, victuals, match, and powder were much wet and spoiled. For at this time the wind blew at northeast and direct into the harbour so great a gale that the sea brake extremely on the bar, and the tide went very forcibly at the entrance. By that time our Admiral's boat was hauled ashore, and most of our things taken out to dry. Captain Spicer came to the entrance of the breach with his mast standing up, and was half passed over, but by the rash and undiscreet steerage of Ralph Skinner, his master's mate, a very dangerous sea break into their boat and overset them quite. The men kept the boat some in it, and some hanging on it, but the next sea set the boat on ground, where it beat so that some of them were forced to let go their hold, hoping to wade ashore. But the sea still beat them down, so that they could neither stand nor swim, and the boat twice or thrice was turned the keel upward, whereon Captain Spicer and Skinner hung until they sunk, and were seen no more. But 4 that could swim a little kept themselves in deeper water, and were saved by Captain Cook's means, who so soon as he saw their oversetting, stripped himself, and 4 other that could swim very well, and with all haste possible rowed unto them, and saved 4. There were 11 in all, and 7 of the chiefest were drowned, whose names were Edward Spicer, Ralph Skinner, Edward Kelly, Thomas Beavis, Hans the Surgeon, Edward Kelbourne, Robert Coleman. This mischance did so much discomfort the sailors that they were all of one mind not to go any further to seek the planters. But in the end, by the commandment and persuasion of me and Captain Cook, they prepared the boats, and seeing the captain and me so resolute, they seemed much more willing. Our boats and all things fitted again, we put off from Hatteras, being the number of 19 persons in both boats. But before we could get to the place where our planters were left, it was so exceeding dark that we overshot the place 1/4 of a mile. There we espied towards the north end of the island the light of a great fire through the woods, to which we presently rowed. When we came right over against it, we let fall our grapnel near the shore, and sounded with a trumpet a call, and afterwards many familiar English tunes of songs, and called to them friendly. But we had no answer. We therefore landed at daybreak, and coming to the fire, we found the grass and sundry rotten trees burning about the place. From hence we went through the woods to that part of the island directly over against Dasamongwepuke, and from thence we returned by the waterside, round about the north point of the island, until we came to the place where I left our colony in the year 1586. In all this way we saw in the sand the print of the savages' feet of 2 or 3 sorts trodden the night, and as we entered up the sandy bank upon a tree, in the very brow thereof were curiously carved these fair Roman letters CRO, which letters presently we knew to signify the place, where I should find the planters seated, according to a secret token agreed upon between them and me at my last departure from them, which was, that in any ways they should not fail to write or carve on the trees or posts of the doors the name of the place where they should be seated. For at my coming away, they were prepared to remove from Roanoke 50 miles into the main. Therefore at my departure from them in 1587 I willed them that if they should happen to be distressed in any of those places, that then they should carve over the letters or name a cross in this form, but we found no such sign of distress. And having well considered of this, we passed toward the place where they were left in sundry houses. But we found the houses taken down, and the place very strongly enclosed, with a high palisado of great trees, with courtines and flankers very fort-like, and one of the chief trees or posts at the right side of the entrance had the bark taken off, and 5 foot from the ground in fair capital letters was graven Croatoan, without any cross or sign of distress. This done, we entered into the palisado, where we found many bars of iron, 2 pigs of lead, 4 iron fowlers, iron sacker shotter, and such like heavy things, thrown here and there, almost overgrown with grass and weeds. From thence we went along by the waterside, towards the point of the creek, to see if we could find any of their boats or pinnace, but we could perceive no sign of them, nor any of the last falcons and small ordnance which were left with them at my departure from them. At our return from the creek, some of our sailors meeting us told us that they had found where divers chests had been hidden, and long scythens digged up again and broken up, and much of the goods in them spoiled and scattered about, but nothing left of such things as the savages knew any use of, undefaced. Presently Captain Cook and I went to the place, which was in the end of an old trench, made 2 years past by Captain Amadas, where we found 5 chests that had been carefully hidden of the planters, and of the same chests 3 were my own. And about the place many of my things spoiled and broken, and my books torn from the covers, the frames of some of my pictures and maps rotten and spoiled with rain, and my armor almost eaten through with rust. This could be no other but the deed of the savages, our enemies, at Dasamongwepuke, who had watched the departure of our men to Croatoan, and as soon as they were departed, digged up every place where they suspected anything to be buried. But although it much grieved me to see such spoil of my goods, yet on the other side I greatly joyed that I had safely found a certain token of their safe being at Croatoan, which is the place where Manteo was born, and the savages of the island our friends. When we had seen in this place so much as we could, we returned to our boats and departed from the shore towards our ships with as much speed as we could. For the weather began to overcast, and very likely that a foul and stormy night would ensue. Therefore the same evening, with much danger and labour, we got ourselves aboard, by which time the wind and seas were so greatly risen that we doubted our cables and anchors would scarcely hold until morning. Wherefore the captain caused the boat to be manned by 5 lusty men, who could swim all well, and sent them to the little island on the right hand of the harbour to bring aboard 6 of our men, who had filled our cask with fresh water. The boat the same night returned aboard with our men, but all our cask ready filled they left behind, impossible to be had aboard without danger of casting away both men and boats. For this night proved very stormy and foul. The next morning it was agreed by the captain and myself, with the master and others, to weigh anchor and go for the place at Croatoan, where our planters were. For that then the wind was good for that place, and also to leave that cask with fresh water on shore in the island until our return. So then they brought the cable to the capstan, but when the anchor was almost a deck, the cable broke, by means whereof we lost another anchor, wherewith we drove so fast into the shore that we were forced to let fall a 3rd anchor, which came so fast home that the ship was almost aground by Kenrick's mounts, so that we were forced to let slip the cable end for end. And if it had not chanced that we had fallen into a channel of deeper water, closer by the shore than we accompted of, we could never have gone clear of the point that lieth to the southwards of Kenrick's mounts. Being thus clear of some dangers, and gotten into deeper waters, but not without some loss. For we had but 1 cable and anchor left us of 4, and the weather grew to be fouler and fouler, our victuals scarce, and our cask and fresh water lost. It was therefore determined that we should go for St. John or some other island to the southward for fresh water. John White would be unable to return to Roanoke. What happened to the colony remains a mystery to this day.